Welcome to Valhalla Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Becky Hill, otherwise known as Soul Chaser Becky, and I am a proud Viking geek. I fell in love with the history, culture and mythology of the Viking Age, and I have been on an endless quest for more ever since. Join me as I discuss all things Norse with those who have been inspired by Viking Age history and Norse mythology in their creative works, or those who have studied the sagas and archaeology, and review how such subjects are being presented to modern audiences today. If you like Viking stuff, you are welcome in my Valhalla, and I hope you stay for the conversation. Welcome everyone to Valhalla Conversations podcast, and in this geeky hall of Vikingness I get to talk to amazing academics, researchers, historians, reenactors and of course creatives, which there are many, that use Vikings both historical and mythological in their creative works in all sorts of mediums. And this month's episode I am delighted to have all the way from LA Zack Kaplan, a comic writer of some pedigree and fame. He's got titles published with Dark Horse, with Vault Comics, with DC, but I am here to talk about his latest best-selling series arc, and it's a stunning cover. It's this one, and it will be popping up on the screen for viewers to get a closer look because my virtual screen keeps obscuring its beauty. But it is Kill All Immortals, and if for those of us who, like me, have binged recently The Old Guard on Netflix, check this one out because it's just that top-notch level better, if only because it's got Vikings in, but I'm biased. So if you've not heard Kill All Immortals, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to read to you the blurb of this wonderful combined edition. It says, 1,000 years ago, a barbaric Viking family discovered a mysterious source of immortality. Now, in our modern world, they are an enigmatic and ruthless billionaire family with a powerful banking empire. But when the only daughter, Frey Asphalt, seeks to finally be free from her family's influence, she must discover the truth about their supernatural secrets and confront her very well-trained siblings in a deadly and epic struggle for independence. It's just awesome. It has been described, and it says it on the back as well, Succession meets John Wick with immortal Vikings, which I absolutely slaughtered. I mean, I haven't watched Succession, but I have heard of John Wick, just because Keanu Reeves is such a pop star in his own right. But thank you for joining me today. I will stop rambling.
Thanks for having me. A pleasure. Thank you. Yes.
So I guess I should start with the burning question that's been in my head ever since discovering this series of, okay, immortals. Immortality is a theme that has fascinated humans for eons, especially since the rise of Vikings, of course, with Interview with a Vampire has all the immortality themes in it. But you've decided to use a Viking family of all sacred, well, not sacred, but civilizations of the past, I should say, to explore this theme. What brought you to pick Vikings?
It's a great question. I wonder, I mean, if someone's listening, am I the first to do Vikings and Immortality? I don't know.
I can only think of one example, and that was in Charlene Harris's True Blood series, in that she's got a Viking vampire called Eric.
Okay, there you go.
And that's the only one I've come across, I must admit.
You know, this idea started with kind of two basic germinations. One was like, if you are immortal and you're stuck with your family forever, how do you get out of your family? There's, you know, that's a very interesting problem to have, to be immortal with the whole family, and what conflict comes with that. The other thing is I've written about a dozen different creator-owned series and comics, and I really like to look at very classic tropes, whether it's mind control or alien arrivals, and kind of say, well, what hasn't been done and what kind of reflects modern times. My favorite kinds of movies and TV shows are the ones that I come out and I'm just dying to talk to someone about. And so when I thought about immortality, you know, what modern ways have we not looked at immortality, or how does immortality perhaps already exist in our society, in some sort of metaphoric nature. And I kept coming back to the billionaire class and just how, you know, the very wealthy and powerful seem to be almost immortal in their names, in their in the freedom to do whatever they want, and then they pass that power and wealth on through their families generation to generation. So very early in the process, I knew this was a story about immortal billionaires, but where did their heritage come from? What culture would I set it in? And Vikings felt so authentic to the barbaric nature that seems to represent modern capitalism, the rules of modern capitalism. Even if you go back to Wall Street in the 1980s, greed is good, you know, everything is okay as long as you win, and you win by any means necessary. And it seems that our politics, our society, we're just in an era, whether you love it or hate it, that seems to endorse this sort of attitude, you know, that the victor claims the spoils, and there really is no moral quandaries or limitations anymore. Everything is okay. And so the kind of, and I know that Viking culture is a very complex and there's a lot of shades to it, but I think Vikings were known for their fearlessness and their willingness to go and do things that others hadn't, and they had no qualms about, you know, conquest by any means. That was just their nature. And so that felt like a really great way to look at the themes that I wanted to look at in the story.
That's fascinating, and it makes so much sense hearing you explain it from that angle. I never thought of kind of like seeing as wealth as almost like a essence of immortality, and that it just fixes that name forever as much as kind of like fame and celebrity does. Certainly Vikings as a family unit have such a strong core about them, because I know from my interest in them, kind of like in Iceland, for example, they're always having blood feuds between one farmer and the next farmer, and son avenging father, and then their son avenging their son, and it just goes on and on and on. But thinking about it inside a family unit, kind of like that conflict within the family more than family versus another family, it brings it down to such a level that we can relate to in so many ways. Because of course, even like the microcosm, siblings always fall out to some degree. I've not met that many siblings that haven't, but certainly kind of the essence that you've explored with the control of the father being Leif Erikson. Oh no, is it Eric? No, not. Yeah, Leif Erikson, is that right?
The father is in spoiler alerts if you're already excited. Yeah, no worries. We're gonna get into it here. We're gonna get into it. But the Viking family is none other than Eric the Red, who was actually
Red, that was it.
Yeah, he was banished from the Nordic area, and he was cast out to Iceland, and he did a lot of exploring in Iceland and Greenland. And so we posit that he and his family and his 4 adult siblings, they were all adults at the time, discovered something that has made them immortal. And yeah, it lends itself to, because Vikings do have a very tight-knit family and a family of codes and of loyalty. And the father is a very revered sort of institution where you follow the father, and there's this. So all of that only further lent to the conflict that arises for our protagonist Frey, because she's in this family, and 1,000 years later, she's finding herself torn between wanting to be a more modern, independent, free-thinking person and being attached to her mortal family, who's not going anywhere, who has barbaric Viking tendencies, and follow her father, who has turned their humble, banished beginnings into being a billionaire, so that through conquest both in old world and new world, they've amassed a fortune. So the Viking family culture really lent itself to this sort of the conflict of the family in this story.
So did you dive much into researching about Eric the Red, and how, of course, his son Leif then discovered North America, which of course where it's all set?
I researched a bit about Eric the Red, and I researched a bit about his adult children. you know, something we don't get into in the comics so much, but it was always, we hint at it, is that, yeah, Eric is his son is Leaf, and we have the character Leaf, but they've been alive for 1,000 years. So what they're kind of essentially doing is flipping identities every generation to allow themselves to continue. And there's one part in the story where the siblings talk about this. So even in you get that Leaf did these things and then Eric does these things, but then we're not so sure if it's actually been Eric all along in my fiction here. So, but yeah, I did research a good bit of it, and it was certainly researched a lot about the characters just to kind of get certainly an identity for Eric. Eric the Red grew up to a very, very violent, very aggressive father, and it by all accounts, the fact that he was banished from his own homeland for fighting and feuding seems to have followed suit. And so I only then stand to reason that this is the kind of behavior that he's adopted. So I did a lot of research like that. Another thing that you'll find interesting is I did research on the origins of our immortality tale. And so when I started to go, okay, I've got this Viking family and they're immortal, just right off the bat, you know, there's this Viking fable of Loki, who steals, they kidnap the goddess of immortality from what's the
she's in an apple orchard. I can't remember the name of it, but you're talking about Idun, the goddess who looks after the golden apples.
Yes. Yeah, Idun. And so they kidnapped her, and then they held her for ransom in exchange for immortality. And so I said, well, what if that fable was not actually Loki? What if it actually was Eric the Red and his family? And so when Eric the Red and his children talk about there's a mystery around how they became immortal, but when you read it, the mystery unfolds. But at the onset, when they talk about it as it was Idun. They found Idun, and we don't know enough about it. We come to learn more about it, but I delved into the mythology a little bit as well to kind of wrap it in the story. So that was a lot of fun to research the Viking mythology of that.
It was a really interesting and surprising twist, I will say that. Kind of I thought, oh, okay, they've got this being on the ship, and then they find another ship that isn't like any other ship that humans have ever made or built or seen, without spoiling it too much. But I really liked that, and especially having kind of like in the era of constantly the TV series Vikings and Vikings Valhalla, where Eric the Red does feature. Even in that, he is quite a brutal, dominating leader. He will go to the extreme of anything to remain in power, and that whole debacle. So it felt very, very much in sync with that perception, which indeed could well be true. I've obviously heard of him, but just not read much about him. Being obviously from the UK, most of my Viking stuff comes from the immediate European and obviously the homeland of Scandinavia, just up across the North Sea.
Right.
But they did go about everywhere, so it makes sense to have them kind of like have that huge capitalist lifestyle in a separate place entirely. I often say to my husband that we shouldn't be surprised if we find a longboat on the moon at some point, because they just went everywhere.
Well, then and I think he's the ultimate antagonist of the story, Eric, her father. This is really a family drama, and it has all sorts of ramifications that we are really excited to expand on as we continue the series. But in the first arc, it is really this conflict that has been brewing, for a very long time, but it finally reaches its pinnacle here. And I mean, I think about Frey, and she comes from this background, this protagonist, where she's been worn down by her father for centuries. I mean, they discovered their immortality in the 11th century and the 1000s, and so for centuries she's being told that she answers to him, and she does what she's told, and if he wants her out of combat, she's out of combat, and she can throw a fit here or there, but for the grand scheme of things, she's stuck with them and she answers to them. Suddenly the 20th century and the 21st century roll around, and we have a women's rights movement, and we have a completely different society evolving. And I don't think that someone who's been alive 1,000 years changes their course on a dime, but I think that this is something that's been slowly brewing in her, and by present day she sees herself as an independent person. She's trying to reimagine herself in a modern kind of context, and that does not square with her family's idea of who she should be. So it's only a matter of time, and we just happen to come to the onset of this struggle, boiling over. But it's really fun to think about the Viking culture and the culture and the era is all wrapped into her story.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that I was going to ask you about, but you've answered in many ways. So really kind of like why you chose to have Frey be the one, be the rebel, be the kind of like defiant one of the family, and not the firstborn son, because so much it's always kind of like father trying to overthrow son, trying to throw the father, kind of like topple the hierarchy with the next heir apparent kind of thing. But instead it's the woman, it's the only daughter, the only girl in the group.
Yeah, and Eric the Red had only one daughter. There's even some indications in some of the historical context that I've read that she might have not been of the same mother as the boys. So she's an outcast through and through. And I guess there are some Viking cultural aspects. You see it in the Vikings TV show where women were considered partners and equal and were given respect. But my general understanding is that's on a case-by-case basis. There's some communities and some men in history that respect Viking women, and there are some that do not. And so, I had to make that choice, and that's obviously an easy choice because we're trying to create a dramatic situation. So I chose to have her father be one that does not see it that way, sees her as lesser than. It just made for a more interesting conflict than having the firstborn male who's obviously going to be respected, who's obviously going to be a favorite, who's going to be have a source of power already. Having a character who is up against everything. She's up against her siblings, she's up against her father, she's up against her gender, she's up against the institutions, she's up against everything. It just makes it a more fulfilling experience to watch her overcome all that, and a more emotional connection for us, I think, as readers. We're really rooting for her. And then I just love the complexity of it all, because you're rooting for her independence. I mean, it's very easy to root for her to but then what is required of her to be independent? She's got to go to war and take down her family. She's got to almost become an equally barbaric entity, which is compromising her very ideals. And that is me channeling things that I feel in modern times as we face, very aggressive forces, to ask ourselves what is required of us in combating these. Can we still maintain our pragmatism and our ideals and our morality when we face our Eric the Reds, and what must be sacrificed, or what is the compromise, or what is the way to maintain your identity in a world like that. So it having her be the only daughter just lends itself to such a better story,
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm right in this assumption that although you've named her Frey, her kind of like the figure that she's based upon was known as Frey Dees, and I do believe she was the one that slapped her breast with a sword when she was fighting off like the natives when they were trying to found themselves in Newfoundland, kind of like in the north above Canada, kind of like just before they found America properly.
That's right.
So she's already kind of got quite a legacy, and even that legacy is still kind of like two-sided. Some sources describe her quite heroically and strongly. Some describe like, but she kind of like she worshipped the old gods, she didn't do Christian. Because of course a lot of these sources came from so long ago after the event that we're always getting kind of like fourth opinion of so and so, not necessarily kind of like someone from the source, which is what I think is what I love talking to you and so many other creators about, because it gives that freedom, that opportunity to kind of explore the what ifs around that time, about that person, about what they did or what they didn't do and the ramifications of it. And I do really appreciate the way kind of had like moments, I think often around the start of each issue, at least in this first arc, where you see kind of Freya trying to say to her father, I don't think we should be doing this. This feels wrong. I know we're immortals and all that, but I don't think you should be burning these people alive in this house because they're vagabonds. And he's like, no, well, if you won't do it, I'll get my sons to do it then, kind of thing. Kind of like it just completely sweeps under the carpet. So you can see she is trying to find her feet. And then, of course, the way she comes into conflict is because she has a boyfriend who's, of course, mortal, because no one else is like them, as far as they know. We'll get on to that segue there in a minute or two, which almost paints the kind of modern equivalent of, oh, my daughter's bringing home a boyfriend that I disapprove of, but very much in a immortal context that they cannot ever know what we are. Kind of like we are better off alone. That's it. It's kind of like you've got to kill him or be done or be told off and go into the naughty corner. And that was such a really nice conflict to kick things off. Not that she'd been pushed too far and she'd seen one too many atrocities, but that she just wanted to finally have this little piece of something for herself.
Yeah. I mean, it was, what is the straw that breaks the camel's back here, and I think what's interesting is that relationship in and of itself. I tried to approach it very complex, and I don't think that Frey is in love with this guy at the onset, but he's still hers and it's still her life. And I think it's more about her independence. I think if it swayed too much in the other direction, we would feel that she was doing everything for just love. And I don't think that's her identity. I think her identity is one of ideals. And so she likes the idea that she should be able to decide whatever she wants to do and whoever she wants to be with. And she sacrificed enough for sure. Why shouldn't she get this? And her family has a different set of views. And I almost can't, I don't have the answer to this, but I almost can't help but wonder if over the past many years in Frey's story, if she's been looking for this opportunity, that she's almost inviting it, that she wants this fight. And so, in thinking about why is she involve herself with a mortal, and why does she let it be public, and why does she let her family know about it? I almost think that maybe deep down she's welcoming this, but it's never stated, and it's left very ambiguously. But I when it happens, she's ready. She has a moment or two where she says, what am I going to do here? But very quickly she finds her true north, and her true north is to stand up to her family. And then she ends up only realizing that I'm standing up to them for my own life, but what else should I be standing up to them for? Like you say, and we see that for history, for generations, she's been challenging her father on all sorts of atrocities and all sorts of actions. And so now she's finally saying, wait a minute, I maybe I have more agency here, which is a very modern thing to try to find your agency in a situation and ask, what should you be doing about it? So it was a very interesting setup to concoct, and there's this fine line of seeing her just trying to live her life, just trying to be able to be happy.
And this really climaxes really well with especially the final issue in this first arc, where she has parted ways, without spoiling it too much, with the the guy that kicked all this conflict off to begin with. She goes back home. She, instead of running and carrying on around the world and doing what she can to stay in Dredda, she goes all the way back home. And at first she appears amicable, calm, peaceful, but then obviously father's like, right, well, you need to be punished. And of course all three of his lads, Thor, Stain and Leaf, come on. And she then turns the tables on them. She makes them question what they're doing. And I really like that as because instead of kind of like toppling the hierarchy from the top down, she's toppling it
Yes,
from the bottom up because they're the pillars that support the father.
absolutely. Right. And that feels the most authentic to me anyway, that you're not going to topple an autocrat like Eric the Red just by defeating him. You have to, you have to take out his supporters and take out his sons here in this situation. And these are her brothers. And and as a storyteller, I tried to weave those narratives with each brother. So each issue has its own sort of energy and momentum where she's combating each brother, but then you can sense that there's a chance for this relationship to go either way, and she's succeeding or failing, and then ultimately it culminates. And so yeah, it feels like the right. It feels like it's when you have a story that's focused on action, and this was a real challenge for this story. We've got an action book. This is my first action series, so it was really rewarding to see it hit so well. But you can't just have action where you've got two guys and they're both tough and they go fight. The action has to come from different philosophical beliefs kind of combating as your two warriors fight, And I mean, I think John Wick, it's rewarding because, he's not just the same as everyone. He's the assassin with a heart of gold. So it's got more layers to it. So here in this one, every time Frey fights someone, they're both immortal. She's immortal. Her brothers are immortal. Her father's immortal. So we know that even if someone gets their head chopped off, most likely they're coming back. So how do we build drama out of this? This is really freaking hard. But the answer is that because as they're fighting, it's a philosophical fight between her point of view and their point of view, and they're actually having arguments during these fights to try to see if she can persuade them or if they can persuade her. Can they point out her hypocrisy? Can they challenge her to that? Then she realizes they're right. She's got to evolve. And so it's a very kind of moving story to see her go from I just want to be independent to maybe I need to have more agency over my family to what do I need to sacrifice to take leadership amongst my siblings. And so we had a really fun time kind of dramatizing that against the backdrop of just kick-ass fights and really thrilling special effects like that.
Oh, I mean, the action in it is stunning, and it is just like watching a kind of like a really good thriller action movie, but on paper. And especially kind of like the little reels that Dark Horse done where they're all slightly moving. It does look like a cartoon, but a really epic
We have a
cartoon.
great art team. The artist on this is Fico Ossio, and if you're out there and you don't follow comics a lot, he's a real rising star at DC. He's done Mr. Miracle and Black Lightning, and he's just fantastic. We've got a real hot new colorist, Tiago Rocha, whose colors just really bring the whole thing to life. And he actually designed this sort of color iconography. So sometimes you'll see like a panel almost has like a gold filter or a red filter, depending on how heightened the intensity of the battle is. And yeah, it's really great. So, and then our letterer is an Eisner winning letterer, Hassan Otsmanelha. So we've been very lucky to have a great art team on this book, and they bring the action to life, and I get to just write, swords fly, someone kicks, someone rolls away, and they bring it all to life. So, it's been great.
It's such a stunning novel through teamwork, as you say. And of course, I can't just let you go without congratulating on your excellent writing. I mean, I come from a creative writing background. I'm attempting to write something creatively for the first time in 10 years, and it's a struggle, and that's just short fiction. So to write for comics, to be so concise and to get so much out of so few words without having the entire panels be speech bubbles, I salute you, sir, because I mean, even the dialogue on the first page when Freydis is anonymously addressing the reader, it just gripped me. I thought, oh, this is good. I want to know more. And of course, my favourite bit, personally, being from a librarian background, has to be the little library she finds hidden away in in Norway.
Yes.
So it's like Alexander's library, but Norse. It's got all their secret hall and artifacts from Trojan Wars and all sorts. Well, not quite the Trojan Wars. It's going too far back, but you know what I mean. It's that kind of vibe.
Got some really good plunder. They've got some good plunder in there. Yeah, it was fun to she goes on a bit of an adventure to try to uncover the family's secrets, and she's thinking that if I can uncover the secrets, then I can have some leverage in this negotiation, and I can get my independence. And so there's a bit of a globe-trotting sort of adventure, and so that was fun to kind of think about. Okay, where do they go? What do they see? What sort of troves? And so one of the things they get to see is Eric's the Red's, very expansive collection of plunder and bounty, which is really fun. And they get to see a Viking ship later, and all sorts of Viking library in the middle of the woods, and a Viking stronghold, and all sorts of it was fun to really imagine that world of mythical, forgotten Viking buildings and entities that we could dot in. And it's the whole book is done in this. It's half of it's this modern thing, like they're fighting in the nightclub and they're fighting on the private plane tarmac, and so half of it, and they're fighting in suits and evening gowns, so half of it's modern, and then the other half is ancient still. They still have Viking hair, they still have Viking weapons, they still have these Viking buildings that they're going to. So it was really fun to bounce back and forth between those completely different world identities.
Well, I think you and the team behind you have captured that brilliantly on all the cover designs, and they are going to be popping up around me. So dear viewers, if you're on YouTube, do watch and admire them, because I know I've listened to your chat with Capes and Tights podcasts, and how you describe it's very much like a supermodel, but after you've just done a murder kind of thing.
Yes.
Kind of like there's a swish suit and kind of like blood everywhere, but you're super stylish.
We did the covers like a fashion shoot. Yeah. Yes.
It's gorgeous. And I love how on each one you show a bit of their kind of like Nordic tattoos going on, because all the siblings have some epic tattoo art on them. And I just, besides kind of like the weaponry, I mean, like Freya's holding an axe, which immediately screams Viking to me, because Vikings are always synonymous with axes, even though we're a very high prized weapon, very luxurious. It was usually spears or swords, if you're lucky. But yeah, I mean, of course, you had the brother Thor carrying like a huge hammer, not quite Mjolnir size, but pretty impressive. Stain has kind of like his daggers on chains that he can whip around, and of course, Leif has the sword. But then the father, Eric, has the even bigger axe of all of them, and it's just
I mean, I remember the very early on, it was okay. Here are the five characters. Who gets what weapons, and how are they each different, and how do they each represent, So yeah, the father's got the big axe, the big brother's Thor's, he's got the hammer, and thinking about them all, and Freya's got two hatchets, which felt very fitting because they're axes, but they're small. But her power doesn't come from her strength; it comes from her quickness, her willingness to be flexible, and so it felt like the right weapon for her, and thinking about what weapon's going to define her, because she's going to be on a bunch of covers with hatchets. So that was
I really liked that, because especially kind of like in the start in that first issue, you see Eric and his boys kind of like invade a rich guy's manor that he's not done deal with, and so they're like, right, we don't want to talk to you, or no, that exists, goodbye, off with your heads, and all that. And they don't come in like with guns like the mafia would do if it was in Italy. They come in with their blazing weapons.
Yes.
And I'm like, that just speaks of like so much about their characters and how much they feel impervious to anything, that like, we don't need guns, we can just whack them over the head with our weapons and be gone, that'll be fine, we'll have a different team to clean up.
I feel like that scene, the opening scene, is totally believable today. I mean, if you told me that CEO watched everybody in his mansion get killed, they said, here's the contract he signed, he came out for the press release, he says, everybody I know has been killed in a horrible accident, but these guys are the best and I'm going into business with them. Totally believe that. I totally believe this 100%. So I mean, that's that's the great thing about, I don't know if it's satire, but it, like, you know, looking at modern times through a lens, you know, yeah, busting through and forcing your will on someone in a business deal with your axes and swords and stuff, that feels very, very modern. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same if they used modern weapons. It just wouldn't, and that of course
No,
reflects like their kind of like instinctual core as people of Norse heritage. It's remained their constant, no matter how long they've lived. It's their constant.
Yeah, that's right. They had to use ancient weapons, and it's almost a kind of respect to the battle that they come from. They come from this, when you go to battle, you take your sword, you take your axe, you take your hammer. They're impervious to guns anyway, so they're not worried about being shot. So they're gonna bring these weapons to it. And when they fight each other, it comes from why doesn't someone just get out a gun? That's just not their code. Their code is to use their weapons. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I'm instantly thinking, of course, I don't mean to make comparisons, but I mean it in the best way, of course, kind of like with the Old Guard being, of course, the latest Netflix kind of iteration, because, of course, oh my God, I've forgotten her name, but the lead actress in that, she's always using her kind of like round circular axe. Right. Always, no matter what she's up against, she's always using an axe.
Right.
So yeah, it just fits really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, Old Guard is similar in many ways, in the sense that it's an action series that deals with immortality. I think that we're just fundamentally trying to look at the institution of a family and the institution of billionaires. And because of those two institutions being part of Kill All Immortals that are not part of the Old Guard, I mean, the Old Guard is about old vendettas and about, you know, their that world of immortality, but I think they're different. And so I would say if you enjoy it, Old Guard, you'll love this, and if you don't enjoy Old Guard, you'll love this, because this is different enough. It's about
absolutely
different.
I mean, especially with your kind of like insight into the family angle, because so many immortality things, like even Interview with a Vampire, was dealing with like immortals in like an individual basis where they have no one, everyone they know has died, and they're just on their own for however many long until they convert people or happily rediscover someone else who is immortal. Whereas definitely, I think yours as an immortal family is definitely the first I could be wrong. People feel free to comment in and correct me. But yeah, and I think that's essential. That's such an essential part of your story, and I cannot wait to see where it goes next, because I'm pleased to say, dear viewers and listeners, that Kill All Immortals 2 is coming out soon.
Yeah, we're doing a whole new season, so to speak, and it starts in October, just right around the corner. And yeah, it's so good. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for everyone to check it out. We're already deep in it, and but yeah, we're getting a chance to expand the world. If you've read the first one, you'll know exactly where we're going with it, because there's a cliffhanger at the end of the first arc that tells you very clearly where we're going with it. But yeah, one thing that I've always, I got into comics about 9 years ago or so, and the first two series I worked on were it was a 2-image Top Cow books. One was called Eclipse, about a world with deadly sunlight, and the other one was called Port of Earth, which was what if aliens came not to blow us up, but with a business deal. And those both found success, so I took those for several arcs. So I immediately began with what I consider longer form storytelling, where you're looking at characters for not just 5-issue miniseries, but you're looking for them for 1 arc, 2 arcs, 3 arcs, 4 arcs. And what I love to do as a storyteller is make the emotional journey more complex, you know, see how I can muck it up a bit and really test these characters. And so what's really fun, as much as we get to bring in more characters and I've teased more immortals and more world of immortals and all sorts of stuff like this. Okay, Frey has, you know, made this big decision at the end of the first thing, and has she resolved everything, or has she only opened up, you know, a can of worms? And how and I guess, who is she on her way to becoming? Is she on her way to becoming independent or dependent? Because you can't have agency in a situation and be independent. Those things are different. You can't change the world and be your own person. You can't I don't even know if you can change the world and maintain your ideals. And so, we want to see her tear apart her father's kingdom and rebuild it in a sense of justice. And we want to see her right the world against any immortal foes. And we also want to see her have the opportunity to be a human being and to have her own feelings and live her own life. And those are two completely different objectives. And I think it's really great when you have a story where a character has two things and you want them to have both and they can't have both. And that tears you up inside, because you don't know what you want for them. And you don't know not only what are they going to get and what are they going to choose. What if they betray you? What if you think they should have the first thing and then they choose to have the second thing? And you're like, no, you should have had the first thing. So I really love to write a complex character story like that. And Frey's first chapter is the setup of that. And the second chapter gives us the opportunity to really say, now that she's thrown her family into war with itself and she's said, maybe I want this agency and maybe I want this independence, what is she going to do when it comes down to they're against each other? And so I think that's very Viking. I think for a Viking, if you go back, to the women in the Viking times, did they want to be, equals? Then that means they have to be killers too. They have to be in the battlefield too. If they want to be removed from all that, they can, but then they're giving up their power and agency in the society. And so it's this brutal this or that is not fair, but it's the reality of living in a world of war. So that's when I'm really excited. But the second season kicks ass. And if you hear this and you love the idea of just seeing, immortal Vikings fighting and then having a complex character story underneath, absolutely check out the new season in October from Dark Horse. The best way to probably is to call any local comic book shop that is in your area and order it, because if you're new to comics, the comic industry really lives on pre-orders. And so shops will order a certain amount, but most of those will get snatched up right away. So the best way is just to say, this sounds great, I want it. And you just call or email a local shop and you pre-order it, and they will order the whole series for you. And then it'll be there waiting for you, and you pick it up. Because more often than not, if you're like, I'll go check it out when it comes out, it may not be there. And then you're waiting for the graphic novel. If you want to read right away, month to month. But if you want to wait for the graphic novel will be in bookstores, comic shops, online, everywhere. Yeah.
But you can't not wait, because guys, the covers coming out for Arc 2 are just stunning, and they've actually got an Eisner winning artist now on board.
Yes,
who
congratulations,
I've heard of, because she works with Thought Bubble Comic Con, which happens in Harrogate over here in the UK every November. So I know she's a big part of that team supporting comics. That's a wonderful comic convention. So if you're in the UK and you love comics, go to Thought Bubble in November. You won't regret it. It's just 3 giant halls full of comic artists.
I think she founded it or co-founded.
She probably did. It's been around for longer than I've been going to it. I only
she's an amazing. She's a writer, an artist, and a cover artist, an amazing comics person. And we were very fortunate to get her on a exclusive variant cover. So you absolutely, if you want that cover on the new issue of Kill All Immortals, you have to call a shop and get them to get that for you, because that'll be rare and exclusive. But she just won this past weekend. She won the Eisner for best cover artist. So very excited to have her cover. And then we still have the A series of covers by Oliver Barrett. He did all the first arc series. So if you see the graphic novel, the series where the cover where Frey is sitting in the chair and blood's everywhere, he does the whole main cover series, and he's doing the whole main cover series for the second season.
Fantastic.
And then we got a couple others. We've got Matt Taylor, who I think might be another UK artist, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But wherever he comes from, that's an amazing cover. And then John Jang is a real hot cover artist. He does a ton of shows here in the United States, and we got one from him. So some really cool covers, and all just seeing Frey in more badassery. I think when I took on, of all the books I've done, they've all been most of them been miniseries. And I don't know that any have been this character, like this boom, like this character's on the thing. They've always usually been more world-based or other things, but this, I knew, I was like, okay, this is a character vehicle. Like Frey's on, you know, almost all the covers. This is her. And so we really, it's like when we looked at comps, we looked at like, well, it's kind of like Erica Slaughter, like, you know, we're walking the footsteps of something is killing the children, and a heroine that you really get attached to, and you're compelled to watch to go along for the ride with their story. That's who this is about. We're a little different tonally in some ways, but I think at the end of the day, a complicated heroine character who's in it, who's leading an action series like that was, you know, so it's been fun to see all the different shades of Frey on covers, because that's really the way you let readers know, if they're not reading the book, kind of who this is, you know, that it's her photo shoot. So, you know.
Oh, well, I must admit, before we came on to do this recording, I was looking through my wonderful edition, although I have all the individual issues, but I had to get a graphic novel as well, just because then it can sit pretty on my shelf.
Yes.
And I think out of all the kind of like alternative covers, like the last one in the book by Skylar Partridge has to be my favorite, just with that kind of like split and the colors. If I could have that in a frame, I would. I don't have a space, alas, in my house to put it up, but I would.
That's a great one.
The
Sky,
intention is there.
Sky went on, I think she's drawing some DC, maybe Supergirl right now, but that I've had a few covers by Sky. That's a fantastic one, because it captures Frey's duality, and you not only is the strip clearly like the strip of a weapon or something cutting through, and it's blood red, but you see a different shade of her, and in the background she's perceived as a kind of Viking identity, and then the front is a more modern identity, and it's a colder identity, and so this is about the Viking identity bubbling out. And I think there's even like a cityscape, a modern sort of city map along the perimeter background. So yeah. I'm a big fan of, as you heard from the Capes and Tights podcast, a big fan of really being very thoughtful on covers. So, you know, trying to infuse as much storytelling into the cover as possible. So that one was an exceptional one by Sky for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they're all sensational.
They're all great, and
I enjoyed that, like that deep dive you took with the host of that podcast into kind of like why comic covers, you kind of have to judge a comic by its cover because it's such a visual medium. Whereas, of course, we always say that don't judge a book by its cover, but with a comic, you kind of have to, because that's what pulls you in. It's like an advert in itself for itself.
Yeah.
I still can't work out how on earth it came into my life, but I'm so glad it did.
Thank you.
I absolutely love it, and I cannot wait to see what dangers you throw at Frey and her brothers next.
I'll be sure to get you.
Or have. It's not their immortality.
I'll be sure to get you an advanced copy so you can check it out for sure.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Seth. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on to my podcast. It's been an absolute delight and honor to just fangirl with you about your amazing work.
You know, I think anytime you take on, I do a lot of podcasts, but anytime you take on something like Viking culture, for example, you know, you're always wondering, am I doing this justice, or am I totally butchering this, you know, and are the Viking experts out there going to read this and go, oh no, Zach, what did you do here? So it's very complimentary and appreciated to hear that you are going, no, this is awesome. This, you know, this kicks ass. You've done Vikings a good job. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Oh, well, I'm no expert. I just love all
Yes,
things.
you are. You are. You're an expert. Yes, you are.
Okay, I will have that written on my staff badge when I get back to work. Like a Hill Norse expert. Thank you. Well, I know kind of like, obviously I do move in some academic circles, and I know some academics, even when kind of like the Vikings, the original series was out, some of them applauded it, some of them are a bit dubious, but it's all a matter of interpretation, because we do not know for sure what these people thought, said, or did, because all our sources are Christianized and written afterwards, and they're all written from the point of view of them being the bad guys. Like, just to go back to your earlier point about kind of like Vikings always synonymous with kind of like barbarism and violence and kind of like kickassery. They weren't the most violent type of people around that age. the
Sure.
Anglo-Saxons were just as bloody, so were the kind of like the people in French and de Charlemagne, kind of like the whole medieval world was all at war with itself. I mean, England of all people, we should know, because we were tiny kingdoms feuding with each other before we even agreed to get along.
True. It's true. It's the reputation that they've gotten, and it's very hard to determine. And there's, for every Viking that is described as barbaric, there's a warrior of every other culture that is described as equally barbaric. So I by no means think that the Asvalds are representative of all Viking culture. They're merely a sliver of a family of Vikings that has now found themselves in our modern world. If anything, they're meant to be more representatives of billionaires. This is what I think of when I think of, and maybe there are some good billionaires out there, and there are good billionaire families. But look, that's the thing. There's nuance to everything. But it's fun to explore that the Viking aspect, and the world of immortality as a form of billionaire class. And so, yeah.
Well, I will let you get back to your wonderful work.
Thank you, everyone.
And join us next month. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Zack.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed the discussions between my special guests and myself. Please do check out the episode blurb for links to their works and websites. If you liked this episode, let me know by giving it a thumbs up. Let me know if you learned something new in the comments. And of course, click subscribe to Valhalla Conversations wherever you are listening or watching. This podcast can be watched on YouTube and YouTube Music, and it can also be listened to on Spotify, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, and on rss.com. We hope you can join us in Valhalla again soon for more conversations.